So this has been a really difficult time for lots of people, but we all are going through it together, yet everyone's experiences will be really different. So we just thought it'd be really great to just chat through some helpful ways to cope and what to expect as we move forward out of isolation. So I'm your host, and Lyn Beasy is our special guest who's going to lead us through, and our topic is moving forward through isolation. So a lot of you will already know this, but Lyn has been a psychologist for nearly 20 years. She's been in private practice in the Shire for the past 5 years and also worked for the Salvation Army for 10 years. So enough from me. I welcome you all and welcome Lyn. We'll give it to the expert now. So off you go, Lyn, over to you.
Great. Thanks, Kim. Thanks for that introduction. Thanks, Catherine, for the moral support there in the background. And thanks for inviting me. We had a chat last week or the week before about this idea that Kim had, and I just jumped on it because I thought, yeah, this is fantastic because this is obviously in my wheelhouse. This is something that I'm speaking to clients on a daily basis and thinking through a lot of the issues for myself and my family and those around me. So, yeah, I thought this is great and a great vehicle and opportunity to really kind of talk about this in depth and cover a few different angles to this topic. Obviously, as you know, as Kim said, and we would realise that this has been really a difficult time for all of us as a community and as a country, and we've all been experiencing this together. However, it's also the fact that we're all experiencing it quite differently. It's quite unique as to how we will experiencing depending on our individual circumstances. So, but what I sort of wanted to sort of pull together, even though that it can look quite different for people, there are some common things as well. So firstly, just for the next 30 minutes or so, I just wanted to try and bring to you some ideas about, you know, making sense of what I see as what's been happening to us. Then how can you manage getting into a good routine if you haven't already been able to do that? How do you manage a routine, you know, depending on your circumstances? And then how to then move ahead and, you know, as we start to begin to transition out, because obviously every day that's changing. And when we originally looked at this topic, we were still sort of in lockdown, and then over the weekend we've had certain restrictions lifted. So as the next few weeks go, we're going to move further and further out of that isolation. So just think back to how you experienced March. And I was looking back over March and realised that about the 12th of March, it was about 2 weeks, I think, since the World Health Organization had said that the coronavirus was going to be a worldwide pandemic. And I think even then we thought, oh, that's not going to happen to us. You know, we heard of stories in China and in Iran and a bit in Italy, but we thought, oh, that's all over there. That's not going to affect us. But we had started to have a couple of positive tests. And then virtually the next day, on the 13th of March, the lockdowns started being announced. You know, no mass gatherings. You know, you can't go to football anymore from next week. Churches were really, you know, being clamped down as well. Shops started shutting. International flights were being limited. And in a space of a week, it suddenly sort of hit us, you know, hit us home. And I remember for me personally, like about 10 days or so before all that happened, I was just at Woolies doing my normal shopping. And then I think it was the next day or the day after, that's when the panic buying started and the toilet paper pandemic commenced. And I recall feeling anxious. Even though I had toilet paper at home, I was caught up in that anxiety that we all sort of felt, you know, thinking about, have we got enough supplies? And I remember, you know, sort of feeling that panicky feeling of I haven't got any hand sanitizer and I can't buy it. And remembering that relief that when I finally found some at a $2 shop and paid $12 for a bottle, but sort of feeling like, okay, good. Now I've got all the things I need. I'm going to be okay. And I know it's sort of like a trivial, you know, example, but I think it sort of represented how we were all feeling quite irrational in some of the fears that we were having. And then when all that sort of started to settle, I started to consider it as a psychologist and think, well, what's really going on here? Why are we so caught up in this frenzy of panic? And, you know, what are our individual responses to that? And so there's a couple of different things that I pulled together, and I thought about the way that we did go through this panic and this, you know, needing to buy supplies, buy the flour, buy the yeast and all those other things, rice and pasta that all went into shortage, was that you may have come across like a pyramid shaped thing that talks about the hierarchy of needs. And at the bottom of that pyramid are our basic or primary needs. And our primary needs are things like needing safety, needing shelter, and needing food. And so they were the things that were being threatened. And so I can't hear you, Kim. You're muted.
I was just saying, and the need for internet, everyone's desperate need to have enough internet was
yes. Yeah. So it was these primary needs that we really needed to focus on and getting that settled down. And then once we got, you know, all our food supplies, and once we got ourselves settled, and once we got, you know, all the work things that were happening done and making sure that we had enough food, then we could start looking at the next level of needs. And that was our need for connection, our need for community and things like that. So I think that some of those things drove that initial panic. And the other thing that I noticed was that there was a lot of grief. And if you're aware of the stages of grief, there was a lot of loss. And any loss and any change that happens can be grieved. You think about the losses that we experienced. People lost jobs, they lost financial security, they lost, you know, plans that they had hoped to put in place. And so there were a lot of losses to be had. And so the stages of grief, you know, that initial stage usually starts off with shock and disbelief. And so we were either in denial of, oh, this isn't going to happen to me, it's not going to happen to us, or it was this surreal feeling that each day, that every time the government announced a new initiative or a new shutdown and you start to see the Centrelink lines, you know, growing, they're like, what is going on? I don't believe this. It sort of felt like we just walked into a war zone or something. So that's kind of the first stage of grief. And then the next one is a bargaining or negotiating phase. And I know that I got caught up in this too. I can remember thinking, can I get to the hairdresser before they shut down? Can I visit my grandchildren, and can I see them if I don't cuddle them? Other people might have been sort of thinking, can I send my kids to school? Well, what about if I go camping? Can I go camping at Easter as long as I don't go anywhere near anyone? So it was all this sort of bargaining and negotiating with ourselves.
I'm telling you, there was lots of bargaining and negotiating with teenagers in the house as well.
Yeah.
Them to realise how serious it was, and them negotiating where they could go.
Yes, that's right. And they're going through that themselves. And sometimes that bargaining also looks like the if onlys. So if only I'd bought toilet paper when I went shopping, or if only this, or if only that. And so we can go through that kind of phase as well. And then there can be anger. And, you know, I think there was a lot of anger. You saw that in social media, anger at the toilet paper hoarders, angry at the government, angry at the cruise ship people and the debacle there that we saw, angry at loss of jobs, angry at, you know, loss of income and financial security. So there was a lot of anger, certainly in those early days. And then also some sadness. You know, as I said, there's a lot of loss and sadness. You know, weddings had to be postponed, funerals couldn't be attended, and being able to say goodbye to loved ones. Holidays had to be changed. And so there was a lot of loss. So I think that, you know, when you look at the hierarchy of needs and the grief, you can see in those sort of steps, perhaps your own experience and what that's been like for you and your family. And so I think that there's been, you know, a lot of emotional reaction, and, you know, our mental health has been impacted various levels, but certainly, you know, there's been a lot of stress, anxiety around, you know, fear of, if not fear of getting the virus, but fear of losing jobs and financial security. They were probably the big drivers. But there was also a lot of other mental health changes which resulted in, say, low mood, not being able to sleep properly, feeling irritable, and feeling a sense of helplessness, that we couldn't do anything about this, that this felt like it was out of our control. And even for children, it affected them. And I know that we often say that children are very resilient and they bounce back, but I think it really affected kids as well. And for some kids, as you say, teenagers, they, you know, would have been quite perhaps irritable or, you know, pent up because they were locked down and they couldn't go and see their friends, and they felt isolated, and they felt anxious, or they felt like they were missing out on things. And so, you know, that was their reality. Little kids that perhaps can't explain or talk about their feelings, or suddenly mum and dad are home and, you know, what's going on? They couldn't understand that. And that may have come out in a regression in behaviour, or acting out behaviours like tantrums, or not being able to sleep, bedwetting, not being able to, you know, feel safe at night, a few nightmares. So some of those kind of things that you can't really put your finger on, but quite often what happens is that kids will go through this sort of regression to an earlier stage, or acting out their feelings. So it certainly has affected a lot of people. And I think that one of the overriding things that really speaks to this is that feeling of a lack of control. Because as people, we like to control our environment and our circumstances. And this has been a situation where we've been told we can't do certain things, and we feel as though we haven't had a choice in how we respond to this. And so part of being able to thrive in this time is to be able to regain a sense of control.
Yeah, and even I was just thinking, as you were talking about out of control, in this season, lots of people are learning new skills. Like we are all of a sudden all very underskilled with the internet and this Zoom thing, and oldies going, what's this Zoom, and wanting to join. So there was that, wasn't it, in that season of just thinking, oh, I don't even know how I'm going to connect with people, and having to upskill very quickly.
Yes, absolutely. And businesses, you could see that businesses that had planned to be online in maybe 18 months' time, all of a sudden had to go bang and get all their workforce working remotely. As individuals, learning new skills, learning how to use Zoom or FaceTime to connect, and working through those issues where even Zoom lets us down sometimes, and having to navigate some of those things. So yeah, definitely having to be adaptive and resourceful, for sure. And I think that also speaks to we need to be careful to manage our expectations of what we can achieve. You know, there's been a lot of social media around, you know, people baking bread. Actually, have you tried to bake bread at all? Has anyone tried to do sourdough?
Not me. no
No.
way. But we've done far too much baking, I can tell you that.
Yeah, we had a sourdough starter for a few days and it was worse than trying to look after a puppy. So I don't recommend it unless you're really disciplined. But, you know, you see all the people with their, you know, physical challenges or expressing themselves or through art and doing really creative things or doing lots of baking. And that can be really inspirational, but it can also be really disheartening.
And Lyn, I've got a question here. Someone's private messaged me. And it says, where should we peg our expectations when homeschooling? Because often, you know, while we're working from home, as well as trying to homeschool, like, where should we peg our expectations there?
A lot of teachers have been posting in social media to say, it's okay. Don't expect too much. And I haven't got the figures in front of me, but I know that there was talk of, you know, there was a post once from a teacher that talked about the different amount of hours that each like stage child should realistically expect to be able to achieve. So for example, I think for kindergarten year ones and that, it was like 1 to 2 hours a day was enough.
Yeah.
Because of attention spans, the pre-reading age too, where everything, like the parent has to be on top of it the whole time because they can't read the instructions. And so, you know, the realistic expectations, I think, are important at this stage. And if we've got any teachers online at the moment that might be able to speak into that, that would be helpful as well. But certainly I think we've got to be really careful to manage and not expect too much. And I think if you find that you're struggling in that area, the first point of call would be to speak to your child's teacher, and I'm sure that they would be saying don't expect too much from them.
Yeah. I know Lauren's here online, and I know that she was trying to be a teacher and teach, you know, at the same time. So I know that was an effort. I'm sure she wouldn't mind me sharing that. Lauren, are you there?
Hey Kim, yeah, I'm there.
Yeah. How'd you go with the teaching?
Yeah, awesome. Yep. My kids are back at school now, so it's a bit easier.
Yeah. What sort of expectations would you say that in terms of how much they should be doing each day?
Oh, I think it depends on the age really, but I know a lot of teachers I was talking to were just like, you know what, we'll just deal with it when we get back in the classroom.
Yeah.
And just being gracious to yourself, like, and just so kind. Like I said one day to my kids, I said, you know what, if we miss maths today and we do it tomorrow instead, it's not going to make a huge difference. It really is not.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just end up saying to my kids, you know, and even to myself, we'll just do our best.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I think you're right. It's about working through managing your own expectations, not expecting too much of yourself or your kids at this time. And I think as you've said, you know, every teacher will say, hey, we'll catch it up. But also don't underestimate the learning that you do just day to day with your kids. You know, like if you want to get them to help you cook something in the kitchen, depending on how old they are, there's maths involved with measuring out things. There's, you know, obviously there's the cooking aspect of it. There's the science of changing, you know, raw ingredients into something that looks like a cake. And so, you know, I've heard of people, you know, using those kind of experiences to actually, you know, help cover off some of the key learning areas. And, you know, even just spending time reading with your kids, get them to read the story instead or whatever. So
Even
a bit
just
of reading, a bit of maths, and that's enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even spending time with your children is valuable, I think, and being kind to yourself in this season is important. And I was a bit late. I thought in the beginning, I'm going to teach my kids how to cook in this season, but I've not been home as much as I imagined I'd be home. Got onto it late. And yesterday we had our first cooking lesson. I had my first cooking lesson with Isaac. But I thought, yeah, that's right. You just got to find the gift in this season.
Yeah, that's right. That's it. And again, managing your expectations. So you might have had all these grand ideas about what you were going to do, but if reality looks like, quite different, you just got to go with it. So not having some rigid expectations in this season. So another thing that I wanted to mention too is to not to worry about things that are out of our control and focus on those things that are in our control. And so thinking about two circles, a bigger circle where there's all the things that we're concerned about, and then in the inside circle are the things that are in our control. And the things that are in your control is managing your own environment, because you really can't control all of these things out here. And yet a lot of the time when we get caught up in worrying about things, we're focusing in on those things that are out of our control. And so getting into a routine, I think, is also really important too in this time, because having a routine and putting things into that routine helps you to get that sort of sense of mastery and control. And I've been helping people actually do that by looking at a couple of different acronyms, and one of them is Thrive and COVID. So what I was going to do is see whether I can actually share my PowerPoint with you and just show you this little thing that I've stuck up. Okay, can you all see that?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, so Thrive by moving forward. So this acronym Thrive, there's some key things that we need to be focusing on that are in our control, making sure that, we're focusing in on these aspects. So first of all, the T, thinking differently. And this is about looking at the fact that facts will minimize fear. A lot of the time what we do is we end up focusing on the fears and the things that we can't control, or we have a certain perception about the situation. So we've got to just be mindful of what the loudest voice is here. Is it fact or is it fear? And, really focusing in on the facts. Because most of the time what we tell ourselves is assumptions perhaps based on fears. So we've got to watch out for that negative self-talk and just think differently about, what we're thinking about. Also, instead of thinking about the things that we can't control or the negative aspects, is using some gratitude, because gratitude's really helpful in changing the way you think about things. And so every day, at the end of each day, just making a note of 3 or 4 things that you're thankful for each day. And they can be about the things that you do have in your life, or just little unique things that have happened that day. So for example, for you, Kim, yesterday doing a cooking lesson, that might have been something that you were grateful for, to be able to spend that time with Isaac and, have some fun in the kitchen. So gratitude journals and that are just, recording the simple things in life.
Even shifting my focus, I found, sometimes I don't do a journal at night, but even if I start to think of something that's making me feel anxious or something, but shifting my focus to things that I'm grateful for. So yes, yesterday was the Isaac cooking lesson one.
Yeah, that's great. And also, when you are worried, if you're noticing that your worries are starting to really sort of infiltrate all aspects of your life, and you keep thinking about things, this kind of free-flowing worry, it's helpful to actually write them down and then say, I'm actually going to mentally park that now because I've got that written down. I don't have to think about that anymore. And that's a really helpful way to train your mind to not be always worried about things, and to just limit the amount of time that you think about certain worries. So the holistic health, and that's looking at, you know, your physical, your spiritual, your emotional health. But in terms of your physical health, even just like really basic things like making sure that you're focusing on good nutrition, eating fresh and healthy rather than the carbs and the sugars and the high fats and salts that we all like to crave when we're under stress, but to focus on eating, you know, healthy things that are going to be good for our gut, because good gut health actually influences our hormones and our mood. So if our gut's right, that's certainly a good start. And also getting outdoors, getting some vitamin D every day, going for a walk, or if you can't go for a walk, at least, you know, sort of sit outside in the sunshine, or, you know, do some gardening, just being able to get outdoors every day. Also making sure that your sleep routine is the same all the time. So making sure that you're sort of going to bed around the same time every night, getting up at the same time, so that you keep that routine going. And getting some kind of exercise or activity every day. So these things will all help to manage your stress levels, and also to help boost and build your immune system. So we want to do everything we can to stay healthy at this time. And also, you know, looking after and spending time on your inner life, and whatever that looks like for you, journaling, prayer, you know, reading. And there's some really good apps that you can download as well. There's some mindfulness apps that are really helpful, and I'll talk about them at the end. And I think, you like in the newsletter, there's been some great suggestions of, you know, Bible apps and other things that you can also download. Reaching out to others, the R. So just, we hear about this all the time, but it's just about showing kindness to people. Just looking out for your neighbours, but even just strangers, you know, trying to be patient with people, but also just being mindful of those people that perhaps live alone and, you know, being socially isolated, because that can impact mental health. So connecting with others is important. And, you know, where possible, perhaps phone instead of text, so that you've got that sort of human interaction rather than just a text message.
What's been really beautiful, Lyn, is to see people within our church community really just connecting with each other. Like, we started these care groups for people to care for each other, yet there are so many people touching base with our older people, just ringing, you know, because they care. So people have really just stepped up in this season, thinking of people, you know, that might be lonely, and just doing that. One lady said, "Oh, I've had 4 calls today," when I called her in the afternoon. So it's just beautiful that people are doing that, you know. Lovely.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's lovely. And I remember early on bumping into a lady in the shopping centre, and she was just wandering the aisles looking a bit dazed, and I had a chat to her, and we couldn't find what we were looking for, but that was fine. I moved on and caught up with her a couple of aisles later, and she said, "It's just been really nice to talk to someone." So, you know, it can just be those little moments of connecting with your barista, or, you know, how you going at, you know, being a bit patient with the checkout lady or whatever. Investing in yourself, in your self-development, and there's lots of ways that we can do this. Upskilling, as we said earlier, about having to learn Zoom and things like that. But, you know, for those people that are interested, there are a lot of free courses being offered, not just some TAFE courses that the government's been advertising, but there's online courses all around the world. And you can do a course through Harvard or Yale. Someone I know is doing a course through the University of Tel Aviv. There's all sorts of different universities that you can do courses on. One of my clients is doing a computer science course through Harvard. So there's certainly lots of opportunities to upskill. Even just going through the Sutherland Shire Library, there's 10 free movies that you can download each month through their program called Canopy. Of course, there are other podcasts that you can subscribe to. So there's, no shortage of things that you can do that just helps you self-development in this season.
Even thinking about things online, back to the exercise, I've always wanted to try yoga, but I just thought there is no way I am going to go to a class and look like an idiot laying and rolling around. So the other night I tried yoga in my lounge room. Admittedly, I did stop halfway because I had the wrong equipment, but I will try it again because it's now online and free. So a good opportunity to try these things, even different courses.
That's right. Yeah, because you don't have to go through that thing of, I have to turn up and look like a goose because everyone else knows what they're doing.
That's right.
Yeah. There's Julia put me on to a lady called Caroline Williams who does Christian yoga. And she's got some really lovely yoga meditations that while you're doing the yoga, she's actually talking scripture. And that's really lovely if you want to get into that, and you can sort of look her up on YouTube.
Yeah, it's good. Caroline Williams, was that?
Yeah, Caroline Williams. Julia might confirm that I've got the name right. Values, just making sure that you are connected to your values, recognizing what's important to you right now in this season, and putting in actions in place for that. So if spending time with your family is important to you, to be thinking about, well, how can I do this for us, that, making sure that our actions align with our values. And it also helps you to stop the comparison game, because you're really just focused on what's important for you and, not sort of trying to compare yourself to other people. And then the last one, which, is important too, is the emotions. So managing your emotional reactions and your stress levels. And this is where making sure that you're aware of your emotional landscape. Notice if you're starting to get a bit more snippy or irritable or reactive, and doing things to help your emotions, like taking some, time out, taking 10 minutes, going for a quick walk, standing outside, doing some breathing, doing a mindfulness exercise, some self-soothing, self-talk that's positive. And, if you're all working at home together and you've got kids, just making sure that you've each got some personal space, so that you've got some time to yourself, so that you're not all on top of each other all the time. And if it's, two parents working at home together with kids at home, just work out an agreement where each of you can have some alone time as well as together time and family time, because, you just sort of need that sort of alone time just to kind of regroup, regather, reset.
Lyn, I remember sitting in a session that you did once before, and you talked about breathing exercises that I found really helpful. And you were talking about when people feel anxious or worried about stuff in the moment. And you taught this breathing exercise. Can you explain that to everyone and remind me as well?
Yeah, okay. So when you are feeling anxious, you tend to be breathing in the top part of your lungs. And it's a rapid and shallow breath. And that actually makes you feel more anxious. So what you have to do is get your breath down slow and low. So slow, as in breathing slow on the count of 4, and then holding it, and then out on the count of 6. So you're slowing the breath down and breathing low into your belly. So another way of thinking of that is belly breathing. Or slow and...
the only one that's doing this right now.
Yeah. So you drop that breath down low, and what that does is it activates a nerve that sends a signal to the brain to calm down. So if you find yourself getting worked up and anxious, you just say, I'm going to drop an anchor, I'm going to breathe, take a few deep breaths, or take 10 breaths. I'm going to focus on grounding my feet on the floor, and I'm just going to breathe, and I'm going to breathe all that tension out.
That's good. I know it works because I felt anxious in a moment once, and I remember I couldn't remember how many seconds, but I just knew to breathe in slowly and breathe out slowly. And it was helpful. It shifted something from the anxious feeling to that, you know.
Yeah.
It was very helpful.
Yeah. If you notice when you're stressed or you're anxious, it feels tight here. And the breath is shallow and it's rapid. And that's kind of that fight and flight thing that's happening. So it's just about, dropping that, getting it low. And it doesn't matter if you can't remember the counting, but if it's slow in and slow out, it's going to have that benefit.
It's good.
Yeah. So there's kind of a few things that I've found that are really helpful to, be able to thrive while you're in this season. And then the other thing that I found helpful for some people is to work through what I've called the isolation plan. And this is a plan or a structure for helping people to be able to have elements of these things in their week. And so for some people it will mean doing something from each of these categories every day. So for some people that I've spoken to, they don't have any routine at all. And they're at home and they're like, I can't get motivated, I can't do anything. So this kind of structure is really helpful. For others, it might be, actually, I just want to build these things into my week. So, do whatever it works for you. But it's with that acronym communities, COVID. So the first thing, community. So making sure that you've got that social connection, connecting with others, spending some time outdoors, getting in nature or physical activity, making sure that you're doing something active, having that level of vitality. So, looking after your emotional, mental and spiritual well-being, doing something creative or innovative. And I found that people have done things like building Lego. I had a married couple that said that they'd bought a Lego space, Star Wars model, and that's what they'd been working on. Or it could be doing a jigsaw puzzle, it could be baking something, or it could be something like writing or craft or whatever, but just doing something differently, thinking differently, being creative. And then
I taught my 19-year-old how to make earrings. He made a pair of earrings for his girlfriend, but the other day when I suggested it for the second time, he was like, "Oh no, I think I'll just do that the once. Thanks very much." So,
oh, great!
But it was good to try something new, and even just to sit with him, and do something different.
Yeah, well, that's good. Yeah, at least he had a go. That's
right.
Really good. Fits into the next category too of self-development and learning and growth. So doing something for your self-development. So this is basically, just a mud map I've just sort of put together there. This may help people to plan their week and, making sure that there's some motivation for doing stuff in each of those categories every day. But, even if it's just doing one of those things, making sure that you're doing it at least once a week, that's helpful, especially when it comes to the creative or the, self-development. But certainly I think, those two things, the outdoors and the vitality of making sure that you're looking after your emotional, mental and spiritual needs. And I like to think about your mental health as you putting your own oxygen mask on first before you're helping somebody else.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, especially as parents, we sort of tend to put our own needs last before we sort of deal with everybody else. But we've got to make sure that we're also tracking really well in order to help others. So that's, the two little circles there put together. Thrive COVID. I'm just going to get out of this and come back in.
While you're fiddling around, Christine said that back to the courses and the free courses, there's a website called Coursera, so COURSERA.org,
Yes.
and it can link you to different courses from global universities, and a lot of them are for free. So that's great. You know, that's great.
Yeah. I couldn't quite remember the name, but I know Ali's doing a course through Coursera.
Yeah, it's good. Coursera, is that what it is?
Coursera, yeah. So I think that, she's doing a course through the University of Tel Aviv at the moment, so that's a bit different.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So before I move on to moving forward, although it is 8:15, so maybe I should move forward.
Yeah, maybe if people could start, if you've got any questions, start typing them in, so we'll get time to answer them.
Yeah. So I think just moving forward, I think one of the things that isolation has given people is an opportunity to reevaluate their lives and to have a bit of a reset, reviewing our priorities and rhythms and having things look a bit differently. And so for some people, being in this season's actually been really nice. It's kind of like being on holidays without being on holidays. So for some people, I can imagine that going back to normal or pre-March may be more difficult than others. And of course, the new normal may not look the same. And that's a reality that we've got to be prepared for.
I actually have a private thing here which connects in with that. And the question is it normal to feel like I would like for this isolation to be a bit longer? And to be honest, it's a little bit me as well, because I think, I was thinking I'd have lots of time to clean out cupboards and things, and I've continued to work, so I've not had that time. So when they started saying they're lifting the ban, I was thinking, no, I need a bit longer. Although there's great things about coming back to normal, I also think, I wouldn't mind this to be a bit longer. So is that a normal feeling?
I think it is. I think, talking to clients, there's a lot of people that are feeling that. They're actually enjoying the hibernation. There's been some positive benefits in having all the family together. For young families, sometimes that's been really helpful if there's been really little kids and, the father is around now and so he can help a bit more. I've had, those experiences, those stories that people have told. So I think, yes, there are a lot of people, and I think it's quite normal to feel that way. And while there's been a lot of anxiety around going into isolation, I think we're equally going to see a lot of anxiety as we move out of isolation.
And it says, another one is, everyone seems to really think that things will be different, when this is all over. Should I be doing something now to prepare myself?
Yeah, I think it's about managing your expectations again, not rushing in too quickly to the pre-COVID activities, because the adjustment back may be just as difficult as the adjustment going in. So for young families with young kids, you think of kids that have just started kindy and have just got used to being at school, and then they've been home and now they have to go back to 5 days a week and feeling the strain of long days. That's going to be tiring for them. Going back to work and commuting, doing the long commute every day, when we've sort of had, can get up and be at work in 5 minutes, and then having to sort of go back to sort of getting up and being on a train at 6 o'clock in the morning, how difficult that's going to be. So it is
said that they've talked to people. It says, I hear from quite a few people feeling dread about re-entering work, school and the crowds. And I relate. Today I was driving and the traffic was terrible, and I thought, no.
I know, it's been so nice on the roads. Yeah, that's right. And then also there's going to be a healthy level of paranoia with, getting onto crowded trains. Who's going to want to go on a crowded train when they keep saying about we've got a social distance? And I think that businesses will find it difficult, particularly in open plan offices and hot desking, that they may say, no, we need our employees to stay home longer because we can't accommodate, or there might be an A team and a B team and trying to spread everybody out. So I think it's going to look quite different for quite some time until, you know, they say that this is over. And certainly the stories coming out of the media at the moment that it's going to be quite some time before, you know, we can say that we're through it. So, and a term that I saw the other day was post-pandemic stress. So it's not quite post-traumatic stress, but it's like this post-pandemic stress. And I think that this will describe the feelings of anxiety and uncertainty, you know, maybe even fear of getting infected by, you know, there could be some, you know, xenophobia happening, or paranoia about people from other countries, or, you know, hypervigilance, and that sort of leading to compulsive behaviours and, you know, cleaning excessively and things like that, just because we've got this concern. So I think we're yet to see what that's going to look like. One of the benefits of being in Australia, of course, is that, you know, we can watch the rest of the world and just see how they're going to react as they're starting to come out of their prolonged lockdown, and see what are the issues. You know, fortunately for us, it hasn't been as bad as overseas, but, you know, it's certainly going to take some time to adjust.
Yeah. I have another question. It says, some of us are working from home for the first time. Do you have any tips for keeping a work-life balance?
Yeah, boundaries. So making sure that you're sticking to a work and home schedule, which means that switching off from your computer and your devices, that, you know, getting emails at night time, so that, you know, you've got family time. Now, having said that, I know that if you've got young kids, that might look different. You know, you might have to finish the day early, spend some time with your kids, get them to bed, and then come back and do some catching up in the evening. But it is important that you find a way to, you know, have some boundaries so that you do have that opportunity to switch off.
And that is really tough in this season when you've got interruptions. You know, you're working from home and then other people are working from home and there's constant interruptions. You think, I'm going to work hard for 2 hours and not be interrupted, but things just happen. The doorbell rings, you know, there's all these unexpected things that don't normally happen if you're locked in an office or at, you know, in a classroom or something.
Yeah, although, I mean, a lot of the time when you're in the office, people are always popping in, or
that's true.
Emails are coming in. So, you know, it might be that if you've got something to concentrate on, just turn your emails off for an hour.
Yeah, that's
and
good.
do that.
How do you turn your children off for an hour, Lyn?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't know. I haven't got any at home anymore.
That's right.
Ask some of the young mums.
Even husbands and wives. I know that Stuart and I were working the same day once, and I had forgotten that he was on a Zoom meeting, and I was calling out, I can't remember what I was calling out, something. And then I went in because he hadn't answered and he was on a Zoom meeting. I said, oh, I'm sorry. So it's controlling your partner as well.
That's right. Well, we've seen some funny videos like that. So as long as you're behaving yourself, I think it'll be okay. There's a lot of grace and, you know, giving everyone a wide berth and understanding and accepting that this is all weird. But the other thing I think too, in terms of managing your working from home, is to make sure that you continue to take mini breaks through the day. Because if you're at work, you would be getting up, you would be going and getting a coffee, you'd go and say hello to someone in the next office, and making sure that you're not just stuck sitting for hours without moving. So continue to get up, go downstairs, go and make yourself a coffee, go and stand outside, go and get the letters out the letterbox, making sure that you take some time for lunch. And having these little breaks through the day just helps to reset the mind so that it's not so draining.
Yeah, it's good, Lyn. They're good tips.
Mm.
So are there any other questions? There was one by Julia, your daughter, and it says that someone asked this question in a yoga session on Monday. What can we take from this season into the next? So that's kind of a good question to ask ourselves.
Mm. It is a good question. It will take a little bit of contemplation. And I think that, you know, as I've said several times tonight, we're all in this together, but it all looks different for each of us. And I think that managing your expectations and being kind to yourself, not sort of beating yourself up if you feel like you're not living up to your expectations or comparing yourself to others, but figuring out what's right for me and what's right for my family.
What should we do if we feel like we need more help?
Yeah, well, there's certainly lots of self-help online that you can access. And so a couple of things that I've written down somewhere, if I can find my notes. So in terms of websites that have lots of information, Black Dog Institute and Beyond Blue are certainly ones that for Australia are really helpful. I have packed full of information. Some really great apps that I recommend clients is Headspace and Smiling Mind for some, you know, really helpful mindfulness, you know, just really easy mindfulness meditations, you know, you can do as quickly as 2 minutes or as many as 10 minutes. I find them really helpful. There's plenty of online exercise classes, and as we've mentioned, you know, the yoga as well, but even New South Wales Seniors has some online exercises for the older age group. And also, if you're feeling like you're needing some professional support, the first person to speak to would be your GP. If you feel the need to go and speak to a psychologist, you can get a mental health care plan through your GP, and they're providing those through telehealth at the moment as well. And many psychologists, including my clinic, we're offering telehealth either through Zoom or phone at this stage. So yeah, getting a mental health care plan, it gives you a Medicare rebate on your sessions.
And Lyn, there's another question that probably relates to this getting help. Someone's asked, how can you rewind when you feel you have lost control of your emotional responses?
Yeah, step back. I think just step back and take time out. So when we talked about your emotions, so it's about getting an awareness of your own emotional barometer when you start to feel that escalating, and then step away from it. Step back, breathe, that we've talked about, ground, talk calm to yourself. And if you've exploded at your kids because of that, you just take some time and then you just go back to them and, you know, you just apologize, reset. Hey, mummy's been stressed. Let's just start again. You know, we're not perfect. None of us are perfect, and we're going to make mistakes.
Yeah, that's good. It's good for our kids sometimes to know that we're human. You know, I've even said to my kids once, guys, we have not parented teenagers before, so just go with us, you know.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
there's no instruction manual to parenting.
That's right. Exactly.
And there's no instruction manual for this season. You know, you kept hearing it all the time. We've never been through something like this before.
Yeah, that's right.
In this season. So we're all learning. It's managing your expectations.
Yeah, that's good, Lyn. So we're basically run out of time, and that is just such helpful information. like I've been writing little tips down and of things that will be helpful for me moving forward. So I hope that everyone has found that somewhat helpful. And Lyn, you're a wealth of knowledge.
Well, I hope it's been helpful for people and that it wasn't,
Yeah, thanks for being available to us as well.
You're welcome. No, I was glad to do it, and it's flown by, so hopefully it hasn't been too boring for people, but it's certainly gone fast for us anyway.
No, it's good. So thanks, guys, for joining us. Keep your ear out for maybe something in the future, something similar. This is just a bit of a, test tonight to see how it would go. And, we've got the best of the best tonight. So thanks, Lyn. And so I think that's it. You got anything else to say, Lyn?
No, that's all. Thanks very much.
That's all, folks.
Have a good night.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us.
See ya.
Bye. Bye.